Will you be remembered after you're dead? The Z-List Dead List podcast about obscure people from history with me, Izzy Lawrence. Hello and welcome to the Z-List Dead List. I am Izzy Lawrence and I am here basically not with a specifically Z-List Dead List episode for you. I've got a different podcast episode for you. Oh, what? Another podcast? I know, it's bizarre, isn't it? The story goes, like, as you know, I've been busy. The Unstoppable Letty Peg has been out and I've been unstoppable in plugging it absolutely everywhere. If you want to buy a copy, you can go to iszi.com/book. Thanks. It's a really fun book and it's taking up a lot of my time just trying to promote it. Also, I've obviously had only just finished the episode of Making History. I've got loads of pictures in and I've just got my blue belt in jiu-jitsu, which is really amazingly cool. I'm so cool, guys. Anyway, point being that I have not had time to do a proper research one. The next episode of the Z-List Dead List will be good and no, I promise. Until then, you've got a mega episode because what I've done is I guested on a podcast called the Bechdel Cast, which is based on the Bechdel Test. Now, if you don't know what the Bechdel Test is, it's a way of telling how right on and feminist a film is because it basically just requires a filmmaker to treat women, you know, like humans. So in order, the Bechdel Test, if you don't know what it is you have to have two female characters who are named talking to each other at any given point in the film about something that isn't a man. Now, you'd think that would be easy, but no, loads of films fail this very basic test. And the Bechdel Cast is Jamie Loftus and Caitlin Durante talking to people like me about films and what they think of them and if they pass the test and if they like them and if they don't. And this episode was recorded live in London with me and them. And it's about the film The Favourite, which is also really weird because for Making History on BBC Radio 4, we got made Pick of the Week from a little extract of an episode which we did about cinema, including a bit all about The Favourite, because Hannah Gregg, who was historical consultant for The Favourite, is somebody I actually got to interview, which was after I did this, which is really weird. Anyway, you can go and listen to that on BBC Sounds if you want even more inside info. But yeah, so this is an entire recording live of this. Now, the reason I'm able to put this out is because this is strictly for the Bechdel Cast, like their patrons. So we're being naughty releasing this. Really, if you like this, go and give their podcast a like too. And because this is only for their patrons. And so, you know, if you're a patron of theirs and you're listening to this, you can rightly feel frustrated that some other people are getting this for free. But you know, they're my fans, and I'm trying to increase the Bechdel Cast audience as well. It's all love. We're all raising each other up, guys. It's very feminist. It's Shine Theory. Yeah. So enjoy this episode. Like I say, I'm quite excited by the history of The Favourites. If you want to watch the film first, I really recommend it, and then you can listen to us tearing it apart. It's a good film. I liked it. It's got ducks in it. Anyway, you'll hear all about that. You'll hear me and the others. But until then, please enjoy this entire live episode.
I know, clap if someone has brought you along, you've never heard the show before.
Oh,
okay. Hey, women. Okay.
No.
Thank you for your honesty.
We've got some people to convert.
We've got
is all that means.
Yeah, we're stoked to have everyone here. So we're going to be talking about The Favourite.
The Favourite.
So, Izzy, what is your history this movie?
With this movie, I saw it on a bus.
Okay.
It was big. It's Olivia Colman, who everybody knows from Mitchell and Webb and Peep Show. That is, and if you're late to the party, Broadchurch, whatevs. But so I thought, oh, she's good. So I watched that, and I watched it in like literally when I was wearing jumpers. So it must have been like July, but. So I watched it on a big screen and I thought this is quite fun and I quite liked it, and then I watched it again last week because I got told I was doing this. Yeah. So yeah, that is my history with this film. It's really personal.
Right. Okay, so it's early 18th century England. So far, so good.
Yes.
Very unspecific as well as the exact time this happens.
Right. We meet Queen Anne, that's Olivia Colman's character, and her close advisor, Lady Sarah Marlborough. Oh my God.
Marlborough. like my dad's cigarettes, Kaylee.
Yeah.
Marlborough.
Not Marlborough. Not Marlborough. Marlborough.
Marlborough.
I can't do
it. Like the thing you wear. The bra.
What?
What?
We were like,
Sorry, I've introduced the concepts of bras to feminists. I know it's not done. Shouldn't be done.
So
wait, not
Marlboro.
Marlboro, like my dad's
Marlboro
cigarettes,
Lights.
not that.
Yeah, like
it
that.
is.
But
it's pronounced Marlboro.
Yeah.
Marlboro.
Yeah. So if you're pronouncing it properly.
Yeah. She's on the
Marlboro.
BBC, Caitlin. You can't
Marlboro.
talk like that to her.
Okay. So Lady Sarah is what I'll call her. So I don't.
Let's just call her Saz.
And that's Rachel, and I'm going to mess this up too. Is it Vice? Vice?
She's asking advice.
Vice Advice. The Vice Advice Hour. The inevitable
I have
Rachel
no
Vice
idea. I
podcast.
have no
So
idea.
that's Rachel's character. And then we meet Abigail. That's Emma Stone, a distant cousin of Lady Sarah's who travels to the castle looking for work. And Sarah gives Abigail a job as a servant. So the queen has some issues, let's say. She's very insecure. She is prone to outbursts. Jamie, what's so funny?
You're making it sound like it's a late 90s rom-com. Let's say the queen has some issues. So you're just like, until she meets Tom Hanks.
She also has gout. And
Which rhymes with my favorite movie, Doubt. Gout is the sequel.
right. The queen is prone to gout attacks, but Jamie, you're prone to doubt attacks.
Yeah.
I have such doubt.
Yes.
Kind of what I'm known for.
So Abigail, one night the queen has a gout attack, and Abigail is called to help while Lady Sarah comforts the queen. And the next day, Abigail fetches some herbs and sneaks them into the queen's room for her leg.
But only because she got bullied. That's the thing. She got bullied and she put her hand in lye, and that got burnt, and that's when she knew
That's
how to
when
herb.
she
This
goes,
is good script writing, guys.
Yeah.
It was nicely done. It was like she knew where to go, and she'd thought about it because of that, and therefore that gave her, yeah.
Absolutely.
Makes you. When I saw the scene with the lie, I was like, "Is this becoming a Fight Club situation?"
Right?
'Cause
Yeah.
I will leave. Leave the theater. But thank God. Didn't.
So then Sarah catches Abigail helping the queen and has her punished, but the herbs help alleviate the queen's pain. So Abigail is promoted and given her own room, and she now is Sarah's maid.
Yes.
Meanwhile, England is in the middle of a war.
Which war?
The
Spanish
French.
War of Succession, bitches. Yeah!
Whoa!
Yes.
We're against the French, by the way. We side against the French because otherwise they'll take the Spanish crown. That'll be shit for our seas. Anyway.
Okay, good. Helpful context. Okay. So Sarah's husband, Lord Marlborough.
Yes!
Yes.
That was right.
That was right.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Mr. Cigarette himself.
Yes. And then this other
Played by Mark Gatiss as well.
yes,
Yeah.
who I know from Sherlock.
Yeah, and an incredibly sort of, camp man. And then he's playing this war hero. It's quite cool. I like that. I like that bit of casting. Thought it was good.
The casting I especially like is Nicholas Hoult as Harley. Nicholas Hoult, oh my god. I love him so much.
Okay, Harley,
He's
in
so-
reality, is older than the Queen at this point.
Oh.
Just saying.
And he's
Not that I'm-
probably not as hot as
And
Nicholas Hoult.
also not mentioned in the film, cousin to Abigail. Anyway,
Oh.
yeah, along with Sarah. So they're all
So they were just all
interrelated.
family.
Pretty much everybody. We're British. It's a very small place.
Sure.
That everybody in this room is.
Everyone's cousins, right?
This is actually a group.
This is a family reunion.
Yes. But also kind of like a swingers kind of thing.
So Harley, Nicholas Holt's character, is involved, as is the Prime Minister, and they're always having meetings.
Technically not Prime Minister, but yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, goodness.
Walpole's first Prime Minister, which is later. So
Okay.
this is Lord of the Treasury, isn't it? Something like that? First Lord of the Treasury? Hey, no, history fans. Not my audience, people.
And they're trying to negotiate a peace treaty, but the Queen and Lady Sarah and Sarah seems to be making most of the queen's political decisions for her, want to keep fighting the war and double the taxes to pay for it.
Yes.
Right.
So one day, Abigail goes out of her way to reveal to the queen that she was the one who picked the herbs for her leg. And then we start to wonder, like, what's Abigail up to? What's she doing?
But we also know exactly what she's up to. She says it a lot.
Yeah.
She's like, I would like power and to not have to be in shit all the time.
Yeah.
Yes. And then Abigail starts flirting with this guy named Masham. And at a ball, Lady Sarah dances with that guy. And
In a very modern way.
yes.
Yes.
And this seems to upset Queen Anne, and we find out it's because the Queen and Lady Sarah are lovers.
And if you saw the trailer, it's because you have been in the theater this whole time. It's because you're like, that is why I'm here.
right, yes,
I'm well aware.
yeah. So Abigail also discovers that they are lovers because she's like snooping around
Yeah.
the castle.
She's looking at books.
Yeah,
Like a clever
Never
lady.
a good sign. A woman
Sneaky,
reading books.
clever ladies. Don't trust them.
And then Nicholas Holt's character goes to Abigail and is like, hey, I need you to be my ally and spy on Lady Sarah and the Queen and the Prime Minister, who's not actually the Prime Minister, I guess. And Sarah's like, no. Meanwhile, there's so
But
much.
she's not like no. She's like no,
No.
because like this woman's rescued me from poverty, and as a result, he kicks her down a hill.
Yes.
Right. Yes. One of the many times Emma Stone is thrown around as a punchline. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Queen's health is deteriorating and there's growing animosity between her and Lady Sarah. But Abigail, on the other hand, is getting closer to the Queen.
Big Eve Harrington energy coming from Abigail.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
But she's also getting close to Marcham at the same time, isn't she?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And at least part of the reason for that is that Harley is putting him up to it because he's trying to like get the gossip on the Queen and all of that. So, one day when Abigail and Lady Sarah are out shooting guns, a messenger comes up on behalf of the Queen, but this time the Queen has sent for Abigail rather than Sarah.
Favorite with a and then we're like, that's why it's called that.
Yes.
Oh my god. That was what I said when I was drunk by myself.
And then one day, Abigail accidentally falls asleep naked in the Queen's bed.
Oops.
And then a short time later, the Queen summons Abigail
Rub my legs.
to rub her gout legs.
Rub them. Hiya.
And then
How else do you get laid in this country? I have no idea.
And then let me know if I'm using the right expression here. Abigail wanks the Queen.
No, I think you'll find. I think you'll
that
find
right?
wanking is a solitary activity.
Oh.
You can. I don't know actually, because you can wank somebody else off, but that doesn't seem. That's not.
But you have
that's,
to do it
That's
off?
not that. That's that. That's wank.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very
Oh.
male thing.
So,
I mean,
okay, so
we rub
wanking
one
is-
out
is
as
penis.
Oh, no,
Rub it
yeah,
out.
I don't know.
Would it be correct to say that Abigail creams the Queen?
Well, we don't know. We don't see the scenes.
We
so
don't.
We don't see the
It's
aftermath.
hard to know the specifics.
She just goes, "Oh, the pain." The pain.
And then Sarah walks in on them naked and asleep in bed together and is distraught because she's like, oh my
She's
God, am I
pissed.
not the favorite anymore?
With a U.
Or is she? Oh no, I love this woman. I don't really understand how to show it. And am I not the favourite anymore? As in, have I lost my love?
Right.
Right.
There's a
don't
lot
know.
at play here.
Yeah.
So Sarah fires Abigail from her service, but then the Queen hires Abigail back as her own maid, and Sarah is mad, and she claps back with
I never heard you say that before.
Yeah,
no.
She,
You sound like a BuzzFeed article.
Look, new continent, new me. I'm trying out new stuff.
she claps back.
She claps back by flirting with the Queen right in front of Abigail in a mud bath. And the question that's on all of our minds is, oh my gosh, which one's the favorite?
We're all in the audience like, oh my, who's it going to be?
Who's it going to be? And then Abigail poisons Sarah.
And then we're like,
Historically inaccurate.
Oh, man.
and then we're like, oh, I guess she's a favorite.
Yeah, so Sarah like collapses as she's riding a horse, and it drags her a long time. And while
It's
she's
quite
gone,
gruesome, that.
yeah,
It's
her
proper.
face becomes really badly disfigured. But while Sarah is gone, and she ends up, I think, in like a brothel, Abigail basically incepts the queen with the idea that Masham should marry Abigail to elevate her status and make her become a lady.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is important because the whole thing is if Abigail doesn't become a lady, she is susceptible to basically being rogered in the street, has been threatened by the Harley character and also by Sarah at any given opportunity. So,
Right.
and we can see that her being a poverty-strown wench where she gets a burnt hand and is constantly beaten up is a bad thing. So the stakes are quite high for her. It's not just like, oh, I really want to be mates with the queen because that'd be nice. It's not that. It's literally, I will be
also find
rogered
out-
in various different ways.
We also find out that she was gambled away by her father in a card game originally.
Oh, yeah.
So she's like,
to a man with a very long prick. I think
Yeah,
he's an
pencil.
egg-shaped man with a pencil prick.
pencil
There you
dick?
go.
Okay.
Who she manages to convince that she bleeds 28 days a month so that she doesn't have to have sex with him except for 2 days a month. So that's
Right.
great.
big pencil dick energy.
Don't know how you convince a man of that, but that's
Well,
you.
You'd be surprised.
some of the men are laughing. Okay. Okay. Meanwhile, Sarah is found and she returns to the castle.
After she's rescued by the Lord of the Treasury. What's his face? Godolphin. who's-
Oh, right.
I honestly cannot distinguish all these men in wigs apart.
Right. Oh,
That just
I have a
wasn't
whole
that
there's a whole
important.
thing
It's
to
just fun.
conversation to be had
Yeah,
about that.
because
Yeah.
I could not.
Except for the hottest man alive.
Except for
Nicholas
the hot
Hoult.
one, yeah.
Yes. Is he a national treasure or
No. One lady likes him. One lady.
You've met him? He's nice.
in a bar like around the corner, but years ago.
Oh.
Call me when he's Will Poulter, okay? Not interested.
No. Okay, so the story.
Oh yeah, there's a film.
There's a film. I'm almost done with the recap.
Okay, cool.
So Sarah's found, and Abigail's like, "Hey, we don't have to fight anymore. I'm a lady. We can be friends." And Sarah's like, "Fuck you." And then Sarah tries to get Queen Anne to send Abigail away, but the queen refuses. So Sarah tries to blackmail the queen with sexy letters. But
Which existed.
did they?
Yeah.
They existed.
Ooh. But then she regrets it immediately and burns the letters. And
Not all of them.
Oh, right, because you read
we read
some.
some.
They exist, yes. And she's like, "I'm so sorry, I love you. Abigail's a fraud, she doesn't love you." But the queen still dismisses Sarah from the castle, banishes her.
Palace.
The palace.
It's not a castle.
I'm so sorry.
Just it's important.
Okay, got it. And then Sarah writes a letter to the queen to apologize, but Abigail intercepts it and burns it. And then Abigail tells the queen that Sarah has been stealing money from the kingdom. So Queen Anne has Sarah and Lord Marlborough
Well done.
like banished entirely. And it seems like Abigail has won. But it's clear also that like the queen's affection for Abigail is waning, and that Abigail resents having to like.
Well, because Abigail
the queen.
stepped on a rabbit, and that's on
Yeah,
her.
right.
It would have been so easy to not
the
do that.
symbolism of the rabbits are that they're Queen Anne's, her dead kids, which is quite
Right.
heavy.
That's one of the things that was like, I mean, she did lose that many children, but
Yeah.
the addition of the rabbit metaphor is one of the things that bothers me the most about this. I find it so frustrating. There were no rabbits.
Because Yorgos loves to torture animals in his movies. It's troubling.
We call him Yorgos here.
Yeah,
Sorry.
He's our friend.
We're really close with this person whose work we don't respect.
So basically the question is, did Abigail really win? Is she the favorite?
Answer, who fucking cares? The movie has ended. You may go home. And that's the favorite.
That's a favorite.
Yeah. So I wanted to start with talking a little bit about the production of this movie, because there's like, I think in a general sense, I like this movie a lot. I'm really glad that it exists and I really enjoy watching it. But there are some, I don't know, like I think that, I mean, the performances I feel are like incredible. They're so good and they're so thoughtful. And most of the problems I have with this movie kind of go back to the direction and the editing and the way that sometimes the characters are framed and the story is adapted. So I love all the performances. But yeah, so this was a screenplay that was co-written, one female writer, one male writer. They did not work together. Mm-hmm. I feel like that is sometimes a confusing thing when we're talking about like who wrote the movie. So a woman conceived and fought for the writing of this movie for 20 years, and then they hired Yorgos Lanthimos and his friend did some cleanup on it. So they didn't work together. It was a majority a woman named Deborah Davis who wrote this, and it is a cool story. Where
is it a play as well? Wasn't it first to theatre? In theatre?
I don't believe so. No.
Oh, okay.
But there's a lot of elements of playwriting in it. But she was a student of history who started writing this in 1998, and she came across like these letters and like just like this story and the possibility of Queen Anne being bisexual and having this relationship, and had never really heard much about it, and so wanted to write a movie about it. And so she originally wrote it as kind of like I think a drier period piece that we're kind of used to seeing, and was pitching it for years and years. And there was a producer attached to it who was a female producer who in the late 90s said that she couldn't take it on because there wasn't enough focus on the male characters and no one will buy it.
This was CeCe Dempsey.
CeCe Dempsey.
I read about this too. From what I understood, that she was interested in it and wanted to make it, but
it was
she
an
had
investor issue.
Yeah, she had difficulty getting financiers to finance the film because of the queer content and the lack of male representation. So it wasn't. I think that
she couldn't get it. She couldn't get it funded. I mean, male representation, a hilarious phrase. But yeah, so like CeCe was with the project from the beginning, but couldn't get it financed. Right. So it just sort of like languished for years and years. And as time went on, it started to pick up some traction in 2007, and Deborah's still writing drafts. And in 2010, it finally got vaguely attached to Yorgos Lanthimos. And then 8 years later, we decided we could make a movie about queer women, and it happened. But it is one of those examples of like a passion project of a woman that couldn't have happened without a powerful man co-signing it, because without Yorgos Lanthimos, this movie, even though most of the parts I hate about it are his fault, but it wouldn't exist without him. And it is kind of like one of those frustrating things of just like, for all the frustrations I have with this movie, he did make it happen, and I'm glad that this story, however historically inaccurate, is accessible and horny and fun.
Yes.
Yeah, but so that's Deborah Davis.
Sure.
The pain. And that was her first, I mean, and she's an older woman who just got her first screenplay produced, and it was incredibly successful. So hopefully we'll see more from her too.
Indeed, yes. I have a couple quotes from Yorgos that I would like to share.
Oh no.
Oh dear.
Yorgos?
At least on the surface, not as bad as you'd think. He's talking about the female love triangle aspect of the story, and he says, "My instinct from the beginning was that I didn't want this to become an issue in the film for us. Like we're trying to make a point out of it. I didn't even want the characters in the film to be making an issue out of it. I just wanted to deal with these three women as human beings. It didn't matter that there were relationships of the same gender. I stopped thinking about that very early on in the process." So I read that as like he's just trying to normalize these relationships.
That's great.
And then he also spoke about the positive effect the Me Too movement has had on the movie, saying, "Because of the prevalent male gaze in cinema, women are portrayed as housewives, girlfriends, his wives." Basically. He didn't say that part. "Our small contribution is that we're just trying to show them as complex and wonderful and horrific as they are, like other human beings."
Sure.
So
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I feel like Yorgos Lanthimos kind of falls neatly into this pattern of like male auteur directors that are kind of coming into like very popular consciousness right now, who there's just like, for me anyways, there's this like this weird uncanny valley moment of these men who can get almost any movie made and have a fair amount of influence. They want to make movies with female protagonists. They want to lend their power to tell stories that haven't been told, but they don't quite know how to tell them. And so you get kind of these weird moments. I think Ari Aster is another great example of someone who...
Don't get me started.
I think Ari Aster is salvageable. But in the same way of just like someone who wants to make movies with female protagonists but doesn't know fully how to
write them.
Well, that's Ari Aster. But Yorgos Lanthimos didn't write this movie.
Right.
But just my main issue with this movie, as it pertains to your boy Yorgos, is the way he treats Olivia Colman's character. Because I feel like Olivia Colman's performance is incredible. Like
she manages to get a whole mood. She just stares at these weird people dancing, being weird, and her eyes seem to move further apart and get larger and more tearful. She's not doing anything, and I'm like, oh my god, what's going to happen? It's just her face. I don't understand how she can do that.
She's incredible, but I think that because of the kind of director Yorgos Lanthimos is, he goes out of his way to make her character's body seem grotesque. There are these adaptation things where, while it's true that Queen Anne had severe issues,
leg sludge,
because she did have gout, and she was very sick a lot of her reign, and she did have fertility issues. But adding in like the kind of like grotesque rabbit thing on top of that, just to like make one of his leading female characters look deeply pathetic, is just so like over. I don't know. It just felt like over the top.
I think I know why you did it. Why the rabbits are in there, and that is because it's about Sarah, not about Queen Anne. Because Sarah famously, but like, she didn't see Queen Anne for like an entire year because her eldest son died, right? And then later on,
wait, Queen Anne or Sarah's?
Sarah's
okay.
older son died. They all have kids, right? Queen Anne, meanwhile, wasn't allowed. When her husband died, which happens halfway through this film, in theory, right? But
it's
the
like
Prince of Denmark is dead, but let's forget that he ever existed. But part of the thing was Sarah was just completely unsympathetic and said, "Oh, take that down. You don't need a portrait of him anymore. Keeping anything about him that reminds you of him." Like literally days after he'd passed, and she did actually, they were together a long time and they were faithful, and she wrote a lot about having sex with him. So this isn't. So the point of it isn't that this is. I don't think it's there to make Queen Anne look pathetic. It's more to make Sarah look cruel.
Okay.
It's part of the reason you're meant to go ugh with her at the beginning, because you won't even say hello to the rabbit.
Right.
Why wouldn't you say hello to a rabbit?
She's
it's a rabbit. What's a rabbit ever done?
What word does she use? Macabre.
Macabre, which it is bloody macabre. She's
it is.
right.
I mean, it is a weird thing to do.
She is correct, but I think that's what it's referencing. And you may carry on.
Yes. I don't know. That was one of the beats that once I did like the background research and found out that was not based in historic accuracy in any way, and you just know it's an adaptation decision. And there has been a little bit written about this. I really enjoyed a piece written about it in the feminist film journal Another Gaze, which I don't know but it's great. You should subscribe to it. But yeah, just kind of the little ways that he would go to emphasize her physical illness and her being distressed about her own fertility above other things, and using those sort of things almost against the character to make her seem completely impotent and easily manipulated in a way that just felt kind of not really what the performance was, and just kind of cheated the character. I
feel like he does that, maybe not to the same degree or using the same specifics, but he does that to the two other main characters as well.
Sure.
Shows them unfavorably a lot through various. I mean, we see them all vomit several times.
Yeah, no, but I love
great.
that because every time I see a woman vomit, and this is the thing, every time you see a woman vomit, you go, "Oh, they're pregnant." Not this film. That's. I was so excited seeing women vomit and they're not pregnant. It was
drunk,
beautiful.
or they're having a bout, or
I was so happy with that. But I think as well, the fertility issues are a big thing. Because she's got what you don't know about Queen Anne is she's got the Pretender, James the Pretender, effectively, who is her half brother. So James II, as we all know, gets kicked out by William of Orange because he marries a Catholic. And we all hate, in Britain, in England at this time, we all hate, the Catholics. And so it's a real danger because we're going to have a Catholic heir, right? Mary and Anne, but, they're sisters. They're both Protestants. They're all right. So Mary marries William of Orange, of carrot fame. Which might be a reference, if you don't know, William of Orange. That's why carrots are orange, because we celebrated William of Orange coming over, rescuing us from the Catholics. And that's why all carrots are orange rather than purple and white and whatever. What? You know this, guys. You know this. You all went to school. It's in Slimy Stewart's The Horrible Histories.
Yes. I'm having a panic attack.
Okay. But what happened was, James II had this son, and everybody said, "Oh, he couldn't have had this son because it's not fair. He's going to be Catholic." Ew, right? So actually, it wasn't his son. What happened was they snuck him in a bedpan, right? So this son James, this pretender, was stuck in a bedpan. The real son obviously died because, right? And so they basically, they lost the throne because of the birth of this boy, and he's still alive. So the fact that Anne isn't having any kids right now, she's the last in her line, she has failed. The entire country potentially could go back to Catholicism, and we cannot have that.
So
it's a big deal.
Like
it's
the
a big
rabbits?
Deal. Yeah, I quite like the rabbits.
Okay.
Quite like them.
I don't think I like the rabbits. But I like the context.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
I think I might have killed the podcast, guys.
No. So there was like a Trojan horse baby.
That is so in a little pee-pee tray.
Yeah, no, seriously, a bedpan. Like literally, they smuggled him in. So it's a thing to heat the bed, and you smuggle in a baby in that. You get a baby in that, no problem. When this is why later, like everybody now, it's like a royal giving birth is a public event. So like Marie Antoinette, like she nearly suffocated because there were that many people in her birthing chamber. Right? You went. You bought food. You watched the woman in pain. No painkillers. Just going, go on. Squeeze it out, love. Come on. Hurrah. And, the women really suffered during this time.
I've heard, yeah.
It's really good fun.
I mean, because, women be lying about the babies they give birth to.
Yeah.
So,
but for good reasons. An entire country's, politics lie in the balance.
Wow.
This is a big deal,
But it's defining a woman by her fertility. That's, I guess, what I was trying to say. Like, that is, like, defining a woman. I mean, and I know that is deeply rooted in the time that we're talking about. And further, and even now.
She's got one job. And royalty.
And royalty.
The
Heckled
royalty.
by a man, a royalist.
Well, he
a Catholic. Oh, even worse. Even worse.
He bought us drinks earlier,
Fair
so
enough.
it's fine. But yeah, I mean, that is like very entrenched in the time that we're talking about. But just the fact that there is like a visual metaphor also applied to it. Like there was like filmmaking techniques that were made to double down on this theme in her life. And I felt like was made to make her look dumber and
more pathetic, definitely. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And there was like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the research I was doing indicated that Queen Anne did participate in politics quite a bit and is not quite as the like lame duck she's presented as in this movie.
But Sarah did kind of do everything. And Sarah really, because Queen Anne was Tory, so she was like, she was with, your pretty boy all the time, really. Oh. In reality, she was just like, exactly.
Good for her.
She obviously fancied him. And Sarah was very much a Whig. So Sarah really directed her in quite a harsh way. I mean, she was, she had the highest position in court, which is, Master of the Stool. We all know what that is. Yes, they know what that is. What? No, literally, it's the person who wipes the royal anus. Oh. Because that is Master of the Stool, you take the shit away. That is your job. And as a result, you have one-on-one contact with the monarch at any time. So you can just get in there and just go, hey, guess what? Right? And just into the ear and the arsehole. Because let's face it, Anybody who's that close to your bits, you tend to trust.
Right. No, it's as close to your ear as that.
Yes.
You wouldn't want to. Okay. Yeah. No, 100%.
To your point, Jamie, there's also a scene where like you see Queen Anne like grabbing a baby from another woman, and then she's like give me my baby back. It was she's made to look pretty pathetic, but so are I don't know. I
don't think that like Sarah and Abigail are made to look quite as pathetic because they have very strong motivations that we understand.
Abigail's very pathetic in some, when she's hitting her face with the book.
Really? I think I empathize with Abigail more than almost anyone because we know that she has come from absolutely nothing. And while you may not agree with the practices that she takes on, like I mean, it's like when you find out that she was traded, or like her entire life was
gambled into sexual servitude, basically.
Right, and then I think that her character, I mean, even though she's not a good person per se, but you at least understand where she's coming from.
She's sleeping the way to the top, though, which is not on. But in terms of feminist politics, I don't think Sarah is. I think Sarah in the film is portrayed that she loves her. I think that's a genuine thing.
I think that, and that's kind of open to interpretation.
But it's open to, well, I mean, historically we don't know, but Sarah in the film, it looks as though she's definitely in love with her, and that's why she is so honest and brutal with her, and she is a flawed character in that sense.
Agree, yeah.
Whereas you got this little snivelling little thing lying all her way to the top just because, it's just wrong. I don't like her. Don't like her.
Well,
Emma Stone, don't like her.
Well, that was I was kind of on like an Emma Stone board of her in too many movies, leave me alone parade, but she kind of won me back on this one. I like
she's
her
great. I mean, but I hate her throughout it. Pretty much. There's no point where I just go, oh, that was no, it wasn't nice. It was just for you. She's evil.
I don't think so. I think that someone who is at that much of a disadvantage and has lost everything, fucking over rich people for personal gain is like somewhat admirable. Like,
it's a Varna Trump, isn't it? It's that one.
No, she was born rich. She was. I mean, I'm not talking about someone who's coming from.
I mean, so was
until she was traded away in a card game, and then she's fallen in dog shit and being hired to be a monster.
She's fallen in dog shit, but she easily gets a job in a nice house because she got influence because of her birth. That's better than the people she's, the actual maids who still have to scrub the floors.
Right, that's true.
So, they're not doing that, are they? They're being honest and trying to have a good life and be good little Christian women. She
poisoning her cousin.
Exactly. She's a murderer. That is not somebody, she's a murderer who sleeps her way to the top is not somebody I like. Or want to be mates with. Whereas Sarah, Sarah I see as, somebody, flawed, but is trying to act right.
I don't know.
I just want a shit stir here. This is just getting arguments.
I mean, but that's the fact that we're having this conversation at all. I do like that there's like three very different, distinct, flawed, fucked up women leading a movie at all. Yeah, like that is cool. And the fact that there's this much for us to talk about other than like them, because in most period pieces, and like what is I think a big strength of this, in most period pieces, I feel like the way that the men are sidelined and made to look goofy constantly, which we'll talk about too, but the way that men are sidelined and made to look ineffectual and goofy is how women are usually treated in these period pieces. So the fact that they're front and center and throwing up and fucking and like and being making big world decisions independently of kind of the various guys in wigs who are throwing tomatoes at each other.
Right.
Like that's cool and different and
for sure I
think was like exciting for a lot of people.
Yeah, the main thing that struck me, at least at on first glance, like this is largely a story about three women, but two of the women, Sarah and Abigail, are in competition with each other. So that always like raises a red flag for us. But this time, one, it's over the affection of another woman, which is something we never see. And then it also has a lot to do with like Abigail's self-preservation and survival instincts, and like there's class differences, power, all this so that is super interesting and fresh and stuff we don't usually get to see. And then like in movies, if there are two women who are cruel to each other usually, or they're in like competition, usually we don't understand why. It's just like women be petty, and that's why.
It's because she's got better lipstick. She's prettier.
Right. Because like nothing will be established about the characters or their motivations, so we don't understand why. But in this movie,
we know exactly why.
Yeah. There's clear reasons. There's clear motivations for all of the characters. It is not admirable for any of them, really. They're, not people to look up to. But
that's also not what this movie's trying to do, which is nice. It's like, it is kind of nice that there are, I don't know, just like, because I think, and we've talked about this on the show quite a bit, of a time where that is still now to some extent, but when there were movies that heavily featured women, it had to be almost like an example setting kind of thing. And like every female character had to be this example to be set, because there were only so many female characters that got to take the lead in a story. But now that there is a little more space and a little, like, there are more women in movies, it is kind of cool to see like 3 assholes.
Right. Visibility of shitty women.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought that too, where it's like, these are not admirable characters. These are not examples. These are not people to look up to.
Right. But they're never framed that way either.
Right, exactly. And this is more of a movie is like, here's how some women are. And, they're all deeply flawed. Like, Abigail is very manipulative and conniving. What is happening back there?
It's a pub in London. This happens. It's the Gurgle monster.
It's a ghost.
It is Queen Anne coming back. So actually, I was a very nice lady.
But like, Abigail is very manipulative and conniving. The queen is, jealous and immature. Sarah is like often lacking compassion, and she's, very brazen. They're all very selfish. So, again,
I don't think Sarah's that selfish. She's not depicted as that. She kind of says, she does sort of like, I think she's doing what she thinks right for the country.
But she's also trying to change the political party of the queen through coercion and manipulation.
Yeah, but because for the good of the country and her husband's career.
Right.
For the good of the country. She does. Sarah actually ends up sort of dying in her 80s, by the way. The richest woman who's like ever lived. She had the equivalent, I think, of something like $85 million now. Or pounds, I was going to say, but actually it's the same these days.
Right. Topical.
I know. But she carries on. She falls out with every queen and, beyond, and the kings,
continue in like high power going on?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Have you been to Blenheim Palace?
No.
Because that is where she, had her domain. She falls out with her own daughters as well. So, she ends up sort of, she's related to Lady Diana.
Oh.
And the Spencers are all her. And also
Churchill.
Winston Churchill was born at Blenheim Palace, which she helped design. So there we go.
Wow.
Or Woodstock Manor or something as it was known then. But there we go.
My goodness.
God, everyone's related.
So she was proper boss. This woman was boss, and she was still having affairs. She never remarried. Once he died, she was like, brilliant. And apparently she lasted longer than some of her younger lovers. So there we go. Which is, she was pretty boss. I quite like Sarah in terms of the fact in this film. I like her. I think she's just.
I like her in the movie
she's just a bit rubbish at being, not cold.
Yeah.
I like that all 3 of them, to some extent, kind of with the exception of Queen Anne, who has so much power that she doesn't need to be cruel to people for the most part. Mm-hmm. But
she's cruel to Sarah.
She's cruel. She is cruel to Sarah, but Sarah's also equally cruel to her.
No, but in different ways. Sarah's honest with her, and Anne's deliberately trying to manipulate her and make her jealous.
But the kind of honest where you're like, you look like a badger.
Well, she does look like a badger.
I don't know. That's just like not my favorite kind of friend.
Okay. Sarah reminds me a lot of my mother.
Now we get to the heart of the matter. We got there. But I like that, it's like you do have understanding for why, like it's not like, or it doesn't come off as women being petty towards each other for no reason.
Right.
There is like a very grounded reason for why they're doing it. There's a grounded historical reason for why they're doing it. And there's like, I don't know, as like much as we say now, like there's room for everyone. At this time, there was not room for a lot of women in positions of power at all. So it unfortunately does make some sense that they were beating each other over, and poisoning each other and tossing their cousins off of horses to try to get the like one position of power for a woman that you weren't necessarily born into.
Right.
Or you could marry into.
You could marry into it, which they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Abigail and Masham, a romance for the ages.
Unrelated, I really, my favorite scene is when Abigail marries the Hawkeye and then she jerks him off on the wedding night and doesn't look at him.
I like that. Male sexuality definitely in the background of this film.
I wanted to just talk a little bit about how the movie portrays men. Because we already discussed this a little bit, but like in this movie, men are sidelined for the most part, or if they are given any sort of subplots, they're shown very unfavorably, like they are just as manipulative and vile as some of our female characters. And then they're there, they're doing stuff, but they're not part of the main storyline. And I would argue that they could even be written out, or we could like apply the sexy lamp test to them.
Ooh, but like the like freaky wig,
right?
And
wouldn't change the story that much if any of the men were removed.
But I am glad that they're there and kind of being like, that feels like a commentary on the time and of like the genre of movie that we're watching too, where it's like, God knows how many movies there are of like men of this era making very important decisions and smelling totally normal. Like, and while like the women are near them, like, my husband he's so incredibly brave. And it is cool to see them there and kind of being made a big dumb spectacle of, and they are made to seem at every turn, whether it's politically, whether it's visually, whether it's sexually, they're made to seem like comically impotent.
Oh yeah,
which is a little cathartic. Like, it is cool to watch.
Yeah, starting with the guy in the carriage on Abigail's journey to the palace, he is wanking himself off. Is that
He's just
right?
wanking. He's just wanking.
He's just
wanking.
Okay.
He's having a wank.
Having a wank.
Oh,
I'm being educational.
the possession. Okay.
And then he assaults her by grabbing her butt, and then that causes her to like fall off the carriage into the mud.
But
we never meet Abigail's dad, but we learn about her backstory with him, where he sold her to a man because he had a gambling addiction. Masham, there's different scenes where he's like trying to seduce her, but only because Nicholas Hoult is telling him to. And then he shows up in her like bedchamber, and she's like, "Are you here to seduce me or rape me?" And he says, "I'm a gentleman." And she says, "So rape then."
It's a funny line.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, the wank scene where she wanks him. Is that right? I don't know.
Yeah. But where she's like jerking him off, not looking at him, and plotting evil against
Scheming.
her cousin. I fully gave that hand job in high school at one point.
Yeah, she's like, now that she's not here, I'm even more worried than I was.
Why is my cousin so mean to me? It's a relatable hand job. And he's also kind of like fine with it. He's like, cool.
Yeah.
I'm coming.
He's like, I creamed, so whatever.
I mean, the poor boy gets used quite a lot, because the only reason she's interested in him at all and leads him on at all is because so she can secure her place in the court.
Right.
Which is, kind of evil.
But you're just like, oh, fuck him. Like, I don't know. It is fun to like, I mean, and I'm sure the historical accuracy of this comes into play at some point, but it is kind of fun to just like watch the main women in the story just, use men like men use women most of the time in these exact types of movies. It's
And then Izzy, as you kind of pointed out, Queen Anne's husband, Prince George, was alive.
Yeah.
But he is not made a character in this movie at all. They completely omit
just like
him.
doesn't matter. And the thing is, but he's also, their relationship was actually quite close, really. It was an arranged marriage because obviously royalty, you need to. But they were quite close. I mean, they did have 17 kids or attempts
They must
at
have
children.
been fucking a lot.
I mean, Anne details this in historical notes as well. I believe with his top boots on.
Oh.
Which is...
Oh,
very Mussolini-like. But so they were kind of happily married, which there isn't much evidence that, she said things like about Sarah that she was her beloved and she couldn't wait for her embrace, but there's no actual evidence of, lesbian antics actually happening, but probably were.
I mean,
you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, you would. If you
what else is there to do?
Exactly.
I like that the movie takes the leap. They're like, no, for sure, and a lot. Yeah, okay.
So there is a large conversation to be had about the love triangle and queerness
queer
in this
representation,
movie.
yeah.
So just a little bit about the concept of a love triangle. It's a common storytelling device. I know this because I have a master's degree in screenwriting.
Not because you've seen season 2 of Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
Right. I don't like to bring it up. Okay. In mainstream Hollywood movies, it is most frequently a love triangle between one woman and 2 men. Think things like Twilight, Hunger Games,
Bridget Jones,
Titanic.
Yes.
Ever heard of it?
I mean, but the choice is so clear.
Right.
Yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean, kind of. That's more of a 3.
Oh, kind of. The Notebook, Sweet Home Alabama. Sure. So things like that. The list goes on.
Yeah.
And the favorite, the love triangle, is among 3 women, which is pretty groundbreaking for like a mainstream Hollywood movie. And then as far as a representation of queerness goes, I talked to friend of the cast, Lauren Flans. She was one of our guests on the Carol episode and one of the co-hosts of the podcast Coming Out with Lauren and Nicole. And she expressed on that Carol episode
she loves
this movie.
Loves.
So I asked her take on how queerness was represented in The Favorite, and here's what she had to say. It's rather long, so bear with me. Bear with me if you were at the Brave show. Okay. I goddamn love this movie, and this is Lauren. I goddamn love this movie, and it's not just because my new sexual fantasy is for Rachel Weisz to slap me as hard as she can. I think it did an excellent job of portraying female queerness and how it played into power dynamics. With the relationship between Abigail and the Queen, it's obvious, in my opinion, that this is 100% a gay for pay situation on Abigail's part. That is, I don't consider Emma Stone's character to be a queer character. She's clearly using sex and intimacy to get ahead and improve her status exactly the same way she would if the Queen were a man. What I thought was especially cool about the way this is portrayed, though, is that there's nothing icky about this to her. There's no scene where Abigail is like walking in the forest alone with her brow furrowed, and we're supposed to know she's thinking, but can I actually put my fingers in a woman? Even to secure my future? I love that for Abigail, sex and relationships are used exactly the same way with the Queen as they are with Masham. As for the Queen, I think she's attracted to Abigail and likes the attention, but that's pretty much the extent of the emotional side of their relationship. Because this, again, in my opinion, is so clear-cut with Abigail, I think it makes it really stand out that what Sarah and the Queen have is different, both romantically and sexually speaking.
I'm just saying this is what I said the entire time.
Yes. First, though, a little tangent. I'm gay AF. Again,
I'm gay a bit.
Okay, a bit. But it drove me crazy last year how every single article was like, Rachel Weisz is playing her second lesbian character. I personally think it's super clear that her characters in both Disobedience and The Favorite are bi, and I don't understand why, at the very least, they weren't just referred to in the media as queer as opposed to lesbian. In Disobedience, we literally see her have sex with a man, and we're led to believe that she initiated the encounter out of grief. And in the limited time we see Sarah with her husband in The Favorite, they definitely seem to have an affection, love for one another. So that's my little bi erasure gripe with the way both of Rachel Weisz's queer characters were portrayed in the media. I think The Favorite does a fantastic job of showing that while, yes, there is undeniably a power manipulation aspect to Sarah's sexual relationship with the Queen, there are also obviously genuine feelings there on both sides. It's complicated because when someone is at least in part using / manipulating someone, the immediate assumption tends to be that they don't love them. But I think that with Sarah, it's definitely both. And I think that we most clearly see this during the scene where she speaks to the Queen through the door to her room where she no longer has the key to. If the relationship was merely power-based, I don't think she would have a problem just telling the Queen that what she wanted to hear so that she could get back into her good graces. But because there is real love there, both of them are too proud / hurt to give in at all. It's not a healthy relationship, but it's an actual relationship. If they were just sex power based, it wouldn't get so fucked up and sticky. And I think, Izzy, you were
I agree with that 100%.
Yes. And then just a couple more things. And thank you so much to Lauren for taking the time to give us this helpful insight. But the other scene I think really shows that Sarah genuinely loves the Queen is when Abigail reads the letter of apology that Sarah wrote to the Queen and is just silently crying before she burns it. I think that's the moment where Abigail is like, oh, wow, they're actually really in love with each other and I fucked it up. But now I'm in too deep, so bye. To this letter that couldn't fix everything. I think that's a genuine moment where Abigail realizes that she's never known love, but that Sarah and the Queen did, and now she's got to ruin it to maintain her position in the court. Oh, well. And then finally, anyway, I love the fuck out of this movie. A lot of my friends thought it was really well made, but didn't love it because, quote, everyone was so shitty to each other. This is undeniably true, but it didn't bother me as much as it did others. Specifically because I think the film does such a good job of showing that Sarah and the Queen genuinely do love each other, but they are caught up in this shitty world where even though one of them is the actual fucking Queen, men are still largely pulling the strings from behind the scenes. So they're forced to function within that dynamic. Also, again, I really want Rachel Weisz to slap me as hard as she can. So... thank you for bearing with me for all that. And then also thank you to Lauren for
Lauren's amazing.
all of that.
She's right.
Yes. Give it up.
I would say she's right. I agree.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, I do agree with her where the like unhealthiness of their relationship comes up and the power dynamics are so on display, but it almost feels like we've seen this power dynamic struggle before, but we've only seen it in like a heteronormative context. So it's just kind of like a normalization game. Like, guess what? Queer people can fuck with each other too, right? In the court and be in love and like and kind of this whole spectrum of different shit going on.
But there are better stories out there for queer people at this time period. I mean, Julie Daubeny is the best one because she's a sword fighting. She's Julie Daubeny. She's 6 foot, so we love her, right? Because me and Jamie same height. Boom, right? She's 6 foot. She's in France, but at this time, she learns sword fight because her dad sword fights. She runs away down to Marseille with a dude on the way, dressing as a man the entire time, singing and sword fighting. And the big reveal at the end is she shows her tits to prove that she's a woman, right? Mm-hmm. She gets to Marseille. She becomes like an opera singer. She becomes like she has operas written for her. She's an amazing opera singer, but she falls in love with the girl in the front row. Her parents go, "Oh no, we can't have a girl in the front row. That's awful. You know, falling in love with a girl. We can't have her marry a girl. Well, no, I know what we'll do is we'll escape her affection like you do with any man. As affection you don't want. What do you do with your daughter? You send her to a nunnery." Yeah, exactly. Julie joined the nunnery, right? So she follows her girlfriend into the nunnery, burns down the nunnery in order to... What? Yeah, seriously. What? Seriously. She gets tried in absentium as a man, and then her girlfriend leaves her, and then she stabs another man, fucks him. It's all very exciting, right? That's halfway through, okay? She's a much better. She's proper queer and she's proper exciting, and this happens at roughly the same time, but in France. But you know, there's a lot of history there. But funnily enough, people don't write about queer history because nobody won any battles. That's what's important. Right. It's the battles.
That's insane. I want to see a nunnery burning down scene.
What was really weird is because it started in her girlfriend's cell. So what they did was they got a dead nun, from somewhere, put the dead nun in the girlfriend's bed, and then set light to the nunnery to make it look like the girlfriend had died, whereupon Julie's still missing, as is a dead nun. I mean, she was tried in absentia as a man. So if they had caught her, they would have properly killed her nastily. Nastily.
Where's that movie?
Yeah.
Exactly. Where is that movie? But, who cares about gay women? Oh, sorry, queer women, genuinely, because she did sleep with a lot of men as well. But why not? It's pretty cool.
I just wanted...
She also stole, the Dauphins, the prince, right? Stole his girlfriend. Ooh. Anyway.
Hell yeah.
Fought 3 men at once in a duel. Anyway, killed them all. Anyway, it beats a sort of measly slap by Abigail in the woods. I mean, come on.
That's true intimacy.
Exactly. I've got this podcast called the Z-List Dead List. If you look it up, there's an entire episode on Julie Daubreny. She was incredible.
All right.
Z-List Dead List for you Americans. Z-List Dead List.
But that doesn't rhyme. I guess I just wanted to add that, like, the movie, because most historians don't believe that there was actually any, like, queer romantic or sexual relationship between any of these women, the fact that the movie chooses to play that as a huge aspect of the film and give visibility to that, I thought was cool. But also, like, so much queer cinema, it seems, at least stuff that makes it to the mainstream, is about, like, the pain and sort of just the difficulty of it.
Oppression.
In this movie, I mean, it's not a happy story. It's not a happy ending.
It's a romance, though.
It is a romance.
It's political romance, which is interesting and exciting. Mm-hmm. And it's not about, but nobody will identify us and because they don't care that anybody knows or not, really. Mm-hmm. That's not the point. It's about the actual feelings. Like what we all have. They could have made this film with a king and 2 female courtiers as well, in a sort of way. They could have made it,
boring.
Exactly. Yeah. But it still would have worked as a story if the feelings were real. Yeah. And the point is that it happened to be women, which is a lovely thing.
Yes.
Yes, because we're best. It's a fact, guys. I'm sorry. Radio 4, BBC, women are best.
Does anyone have any other things they want to talk about?
Just in general, or about film?
Just catch up.
I just love the fact that this is Olivia Colman just displaying everything, because I think if you're in the acting industries, it's seen as a very bad thing that comic acting is not taken seriously. But it just gives her such a good level, because she knows the timing of the lines, and she can do the serious acting so well, just with the face, right? But she can also just deliver the lines so well that better than it wouldn't have worked with anybody else.
The scene where she's like, look at me, don't look at me like that.
Yes. I think the kids, all the servants as well, all the page boys and everything, they were brilliant as well. Just, no, she wants her. It was beautiful. And I do like the fact that sort of, the casting of it I thought was great.
The performances, terrific.
And the ducks.
The ducks.
I mean, some real underrated ducks. In this
very
movie.
good.
They're also, between us and The Favorite, big year for creepy rabbit patterns in the movies.
And Peter Rabbit, which was clearly trying to be as good as Paddington. But fucking
Beatrix Potter is
I wonder if Alfred Molina was in this movie, right? Would he? I think he could have obviously played anyone. He's a chameleon.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But I think he could have played a rabbit. And in fact, there's no way of knowing he may have been.
Some of them were quite large. They were quite large.
They get to be the size of an Alfred Molina at times. He's a chameleon. We don't know.
Is Alfred Molina a national treasure here?
Yeah.
The same person.
It's just one girl at the front who seems to want to have sex with everybody. This is patting her fella. It's okay, darling. It's fine.
I think we have some time for some audience questions and or comments.
I love the way you're tapping. You.
We can take one. Yeah, we can take a couple.
Yeah.
Does this movie have 2 named men We talk about something other than a woman.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
does it
wait.
pass the reverse Bechdel test?
I want to repeat that. So the question was,
Exciting.
does the movie have two named men who talk about something other than a woman? So basically the reverse Bechdel test.
Yes, they do, because they talk about a duck. But we don't know the gender of the duck. I'd suggest probably.
We'll have to check the credits.
Yeah, it's called Horatio.
Oh, right.
So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's unlikely Horatio ever laid an egg.
But we don't know.
Did you know that Indian runner ducks lay between 300 and 350 eggs a year?
How many nipples do they have?
Yeah.
None is the answer. Zero.
None. Oh, because
Correct.
eggs.
Because
Yeah.
birds.
Well
I
done.
was like, why not?
Okay. There are things that lay eggs and have nipples, though.
Platypuses.
No, they don't have nipples.
Oh, just kidding.
Echidnas. Platypuses sweat milk. What? Anyway, yeah, they sweat it. They don't have actual nipple things. They sweat. I am a self-employed comedian and history presenter. Most of my days are alone with the internet. This is how I've listened to you guys.
Wow. Okay.
I feel like I learned so much. I've learned so much.
Yes. Thank you for all of your historical context and expertise.
And ducks.
And ducks.
Ducks.
But your question leads us effectively to the question of, does the movie pass the
transition.
Bechdel test?
And I think the answer to that is no, it's weird.
No. Yes, it obviously
Yes,
does a lot.
A lot.
Most of the time.
Most of it. I think it was. I did a little test, and it's about 7 minutes in before a man is mentioned at all.
Oh,
Just fun, yeah. It's a kind of a rare treat.
But you do see him wanking first.
You do see, yes, you do. You do
see.
You do see a wank.
I think that summarises men. But isn't it?
They're not mentioned or take any action, but they are just masturbating in the background most of the time.
Okay. Give me a cheer if you've ever seen a man pleasuring himself on public transport.
Woo!
Exactly.
Whoa. Too jovial a reply.
To be fair, I just turned that experience into something positive. So, you know.
but yes.
Yes, it definitely does.
Abigail, a lot of different combinations. Abigail and the Queen, Abigail and Sarah, Sarah and the Queen. Yes. And when they do talk about men, I think it's almost never any sort of like romantic type of thing. It's
No, it's
like
all
these
strategy.
men suck.
Yeah.
And then our nipple scale.
Yeah.
0 to 5 nipples based on the movie's treatment and representation of women.
Right.
I guess I would give this like a 3.5.
Oh, that's quite good.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, look, the audience are not happy with this.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah,
You
that
can
is
just
less
see
than
the
brave.
anger.
Do you think it deserves more?
That you can't negotiate.
It's your
This is
choice.
opinion, Galen.
Don't let them. Look, you've got to make your own decisions here. Do not be influenced by
Okay.
anybody. You've
Oh
got
my
you're
God.
your own.
I do this at every live show. I'm like,
I
am
know.
wrong?
Kaylin goes up, talks to every audience member individually. Is like, what do you think?
Just know this: Olivia Colman is listening.
She's our biggest fan.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Now I'm second guessing myself.
Why?
I don't know. Okay.
You said 3.5.
3.5. Yeah, I'll stick with 3.5 because at the core of this movie, it is still like women in competition. And yes, their motivations are clearly defined and they are like really complex, well fleshed out characters. But I don't know. I don't like it when I don't like any of the characters. So I struggle. And then
Isn't the problem that women are always made to be overly likable? Isn't that the thing?
That's true too. So actually, unlikable women visibility is important.
Caitlin, make your decision. Stop listening to people.
No, but someone brought up Paddington.
That's coercion and manipulation.
A real Abigail over here. And then, the visibility and representation of queerness.
I'm going 4.
Okay, good.
I love it.
Yeah, okay, 3.5, and I give all my nipples to Paddington.
I'm gonna go 4. I'm gonna dock it a nippy because I don't like how Yorgos Lanthimos does body horror with women. Sometimes it just like bugs me the way he does it. And I think it just, I don't know, that's like an issue I have throughout all of his movies. Also, The Lobster fucking sucks.
Fuck The Lobster.
Oh, it's so, God, worst 5 hours of my life.
I really hope that The Lobster is a film of some kind I'm unaware of. Otherwise, you've had a weird experience with The Lobster.
It is a movie. Skip it.
Okay.
But I really like what this movie is doing. I like the way that it flips most of the genre tropes on its head. I like the kind of catharsis of making powerful men look impotent and ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I don't mind the women in competition as much because we know where they're all coming from in a very exact, precise way. Mm-hmm. They all have different dynamics with each other. We know even when they're acting horribly why they're doing it. It's not, I don't think, a comment they're on witches. Their gender. Right.
Witches. They're crazy.
But it's not, it's like not like a comment on like women are like this. It's, we know why everyone's behaving and reacting in a certain way, which you don't get something that complex very, very much. And so it is just fun. I really like this movie. Would watch with Mike's Hard again.
Okay, very good.
So I'll give 2 to Olivia Colman, 1 to Rachel, 1 to Emma. Keep it simple.
Yeah,
right.
Nice. I would also give it a 4, but I wouldn't mark it down for the reasons you do. I think really what I dislike about it in terms of what isn't represented. So let's talk about what's not represented about the female experience, which I think is, the motherhood issue, I think, is an issue, but also really what is missing from this film is any form of spirituality. I'm speaking as an agnostic atheist, hello, but it was significant at this time. It played a huge part of these characters. That is what is missing from this film. And I understand why. It's a film, it's not a book. You can't get into it too much, but it really is a key part of a lot of the female experience. It's a huge part of women's lives. And I think also the fact that you don't see Sarah's kids and you don't have that element to her at all. And, I think it's oversimplified. The sexuality is oversimplified. And it's put in a very, hey, this is 2019 and, we understand people are queer. It is actually represented quite well, but it's a really 2019 viewpoint of it. That's not how they would have seen it at all. At all. Say there.
Oh. And so also, 4 nipples for you, right?
4 nipples.
Yeah, yes. 4 nipples and put Julie Dawberry in next. Why not?
Beautiful. I think that's the show.
I think it's the damn show.
Wow. So, Izzy, where can people follow you online, find you?
Basically, if you go to izzy.com, I know I bought it when I was 13. And what a clever girl.
No way.
What a clever girl. ISZI.com. ISZI. I have to spell it like that. Fuck you. It's still a 4-letter domain. It's worth something. Right? Okay, so izzy.com. You can listen. I do several podcasts. One is obviously the Z-List, Dead-List, Making History on Radio 4. I also do a silly one called Seti Sopo. And I also do the British Museum member cast. So exactly, I know, proper clever I am. And I sat in on so many meetings with proper, British Museum boffins, and they go, "We need a name for our podcast. It's about members' lectures and everything else. What should we? How about member cast? Yeah, that's brilliant. I let them do the artwork before I pointed out it sounded like a plasticast penis. So. Enjoy that. But all of that, you can get links to all that on izzy.com, ISZI.com, and follow me, please, because I don't have many followers.
Aww.
I know. Sad, isn't it? Sad.
Give it up.
Yeah, please.
Izzy. Thank you so much for being here. And follow her.
Yes. God damn it.
A big thank you there. What amazing thing to allow me to put that out to you guys. So if you want to, I didn't include everything in that episode, so if you want to, do sponsor them, become a matron, not a patron of theirs, and you can listen to even more Bechdel Cast and their extras. It's a really fun podcast, so I do hope you enjoyed that. If you didn't, do not worry, I have an episode, hopefully, oh my goodness, coming out for you soon. Other than that, please do visit izzy.com. You've heard all about that, and also check out the Unstoppable Letty Peg. You've been listening to the Z-List Dead-List podcast, sort of. To support the show, share this episode with your friends and on social media. Give us a like, go on.